Although, the one good thing I think that happened in the trial was that many times throughout the ordeal, the 2 weeks that we were in trial, she kept saying, well, here's some foreign DNA, well, here's some unknown fingerprints, and here's another Mexican man's stuff, but we don't know who he is, so just ignore it, and it's extraneous. And it was on the other side of the charts. They have these big, huge charts with all this mixed DNAs and the girl's DNA, my brother's DNA, and then all this extraneous stuff way on the end of the chart that the jury was instructed to ignore and to forget about it, that it wasn't important. So that is the one thing that I hold on to in my brother's case, is that someday that a bigger, badder-ass judge, excuse my French, will compel this district attorney to go back and check all that foreign DNA and all of those foreign fingerprints, because they will find the true murderer in that mix. And of course, we always believed that it was a railroad serial killer, and we begged, you know, to save his life. And of course, you know, I sent Rob some notes, and you know, we spoke to his lawyers. I mean, I called everybody you could possibly imagine within this judicial system, all across this country, and just have been unable to find the right combination of people to help us. Unfortunately, the district attorney just chooses to ignore us and continues to hide this case under the rug. I know that it's a purely political move. I know they don't want to admit they made a mistake, and I know that it's expensive to go back and recheck. We did go to them and ask them to recheck, and they said that they would. And then they came out in the media on the day of Angel's execution and said, well, they checked some stuff, but it wasn't Angel. So case closed again. So it was really a slap in the face for our family, and it was really difficult. But, you know, again, I will not stop fighting. And my brother is a very precious, sweet man that does not deserve what has been put upon him. And 8 years is an extraordinarily long time for this case not to have been reviewed and resolved by this time. It's not going to take a genius to figure this case out. It's really not. And I can just very vividly remember when the DPS laboratory specialists were put on the stand, and they were asked about the testing of the DNA. And they said, well, we were instructed to test only for Louis and to ignore all of that foreign DNA. And that has always stuck in my mind. And of course, you know, it's just been, it's been really like pulling teeth to try to get anybody to go back, because once it's done, it's really hard to undo it. And I've heard so many people say, I feel really sorry for you, Delia, because, you know, 99.999% of the time they're going to get executed anyway, no matter what you do. Well, I'm holding on to that little tiny bit. And with the help of all of these groups, and there's so many wonderful groups that have come forward in the anti-death penalty movement, it certainly has given me the strength and, you know, to stand up and continue to fight. But it did take me several years. I did, as we all do, all of the families, you just want to lay down and die. And really, part of your heart goes to death row with your loved one. And I visit my brother once a week. And it has been probably, you know, I sat down the other day and I figured out that I spent $72,000 on car rentals and gas money and just going over back and forth to visit him. And it has been a really difficult life for my family. My mother died. She just lay down and could not handle the grief and had a heart attack and a stroke and passed away. And but she was really the impetus behind my strength. And so I continue to fight in her honor and in her name, because she knew that her baby, her son, had not committed this murder. He loved those girls, and those girls were his best friends. And I have another little brother that was also very dear friends with Michelle and Scott, her brother, and they still remain the best of friends. So this little nucleus of friends has remained very close. And as we all move on, and my brother has 4 children and 2 grandchildren that he's only seen one time. They went to visit him at Christmas this year. And it has just been really just the worst possible nightmare that you could ever imagine. You couldn't write a story this horrible. And I've never watched CSI, and I've never watched all of these things because we're living it. And it's not funny to me for people to be reenacting these horrible scenarios. But my brother is very, very strong and very, very hopeful and prayerful, and he believes in the justice system. So he honestly believes that someday that we are going to save his life, even though he knows that his number is coming up, and he's watched so many people die next to him, all of his friends, because they do become friends, even though they are isolated. My brother is over 6 feet tall, and the cage that he's in is like 6 by 6. So his feet touch the wall, and his head touches the ceiling, and he can touch all 4 walls. So he doesn't really get a chance to move around very much. And as you can see in the pictures, he's humongous. So it's really been tough on him that he can't even lay down to do a sit-up or to do, I sent him books, I sent him all kinds of books on stretching and Tai-Bo or T-Bo, whatever, you know, Tai Chi, but he can't move to do that, you know, so he gets really upset with me that I send him all of that stuff, but I just, you know, want him to just keep, you know, living life like he would normally. He was a football player, he was a basketball, baseball star. I mean, he was just really, really active. So to see him not moving is really, really difficult. But he's doing good, and he's hanging in there, and as you can see in the pictures, you know, he is really vivacious and full of life and lively, and you can see in his eyes that he's not a murderer. And but he does make fun of the murderers on death row. And so every time I get to go and see him, then he always lets me know what these crazy people around him are doing. And so he always lifts my spirits when I go and visit him. And I think that, you know, my brother's case is not unique. There are so many other stories. Every story is horrific. They really are. And you guys have probably heard of some of these cases, like Tony Ford and Kenneth Foster. And I recently went to William Wyatt's execution because I have somehow amassed 20-something pen pals, although several of them have been executed. And each one of them was really hard to lose, you know, my brother's friends and my friends, because they become your family as well. And their families become your families because you see them every week on death row, and we share rides or whatever, you know. And it was, William Wyatt also professed his innocence until the day that he was murdered by the state. And I talked to his mother the other day, a couple of days ago, and after 8 years of begging her to stand up and fight for William and to send us notes and to tell us what happened behind the scenes, you know, but she was so distraught and so depressed that she just simply couldn't. She could get up and go to work and come home and cry, and that's it. And you just can't. It's physically and psychologically and emotionally and physiologically, it just stops you dead in your tracks. I mean, you just lose it. And she did. And so after he was executed, now she called me up and she says, they murdered my son. And that was, you know, to me, that was a breakthrough for her, you know, even though William is gone. But she is willing to come out to the march this year and to speak out against the death penalty. And that's when it really hits home, is when you hear from someone that actually has gone through the murder process, like Lily went through with her friend Justin.